Okay, Arnie, we're ready.
Great, thank you, Joanne, and welcome everyone to the September 6th, 2023 meeting of the Danbury Planning Commission. We will open this evening with a roll call. Mr. Chiocchio?
Here.
Ms. Hofstetter?
Here.
Mr. Sylvain?
Here.
Mr. Haas has indicated he will not be joining us this evening, and Chairman Finaldi is here. We do not need to seat any alternates at this time. I will open with reading the virtual Zoom meeting intro. This meeting of the Danbury Planning Commission is being held on Zoom as a virtual meeting. Even though this meeting is a virtual meeting, members of the public and interested parties continue to have the opportunity to participate in the meeting in a couple of different ways. You can participate via Zoom and see the audio and the video, or you can call in by phone and participate via audio only. Please be aware that we may have to mute your microphone or telephone in order to avoid an echo or some other background noise. Instructions on how to participate in the meeting appear on the City of Danbury website, and all of the documents and materials that apply to the matters to be discussed during this meeting, including the agenda, are also available on the City of Danbury website. As always, if you have any questions regarding how to participate in the meeting, please contact the City of Danbury Planning and Zoning Department. As a reminder, the entire meeting will be posted on and can be seen on the City of Danbury website. We will follow the posted agenda as per standard practice. If prior to the meeting any questions or comments on agenda items were submitted via email to the Planning and Zoning Department, those comments will be read during the appropriate portion of the meeting. Finally, please remember that technology glitches sometimes do occur. Please be patient if that happens. Next item on our agenda, Commission members, is acceptance of the minutes of the August 16th, 2023 meeting. Those minutes have previously been distributed. Unless there's any corrections or discussion, I will entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
Mr. Chairman, so moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to accept the minutes. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are accepted. Let the record show the next regular meeting of the Danbury Planning Commission is scheduled for September 20th, 2023. We have one public hearing this evening. Before I proceed into it, I will read the legal notice. Legal notice is hereby given that the Planning Commission of the City of Danbury will hold a public hearing commencing at 7:30 p.m. on Wednesday, September 6th, 2023, and a web-based meeting hosted on Zoom to consider the following matter. Safe Store Real Estate Company, LLC, applicant 94 Sandpit Road, LLC, property owner. Application for special exception site plan approval for self-storage safe store in the IL40 zone, 94 Sandpit Road, K10014, special exception number 795. A copy of this application is on file in the Planning and Zoning Office for public inspection. Parties in interest and citizens shall have an opportunity to be heard at this time. Agenda to be posted will include instructions on how to access the Zoom meeting and application materials and view the meeting in real time on YouTube. Arnold E. Finaldi, Jr., Chairman. Posted on City website and Town Clerk's Office on August 22nd, 2023. Published in News Times on August 25th, 2023, and September 1st, 2023. Purchase order number 2024-8. Commission members, several documents pertaining to this application were previously distributed. This time I will ask, is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of this application?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Amy Suchins. I'm an attorney at Hurwitz, Sagarin, Schlossberg, and Nuff with offices in Milford, here on behalf of the applicant, Safe Store Real Estate Company, LLC.
Sure, go right ahead, proceed.
Great. With me tonight is Chaz Evans from Bowler Engineering. He'll walk you through most of the details of the site and the development plan, but I just wanted to give you a brief overview to set the stage for the presentation that Chaz is going to give you. As you noted in the legal notice, this property is at 94 Sandpit Road. It's approximately 1.8 acres, currently zoned IL 40. The property currently has a number of uses on it and very little in the way of drainage and stormwater improvements, which is going to be a focus of Chaz's overview. The current uses include an automotive repair shop, a landscaping company, and another sort of quasi-industrial user. So this will certainly clean up the site, consolidate all of the uses into one single user, and allow for a great deal of improvements on the site. Just to orient you, the property is adjacent to Interstate 84. What we think of as the rear of the property does abut 84 and is, as you'll see in the site plans, and in Chaz's presentation, there's a fairly steep embankment along the back of the property as it accesses or crosses the boundary with I-84 and into the state right-of-way. There are some inland wetlands located in the rear of the property. And so in June of this year, we did receive approval for the proposed regulated activities from the Environmental Impact Commission. And those are mostly related to the stormwater improvements that we've noted. Just by way of background, and I'll come back and we'll show you the some updated renderings and floor plan. The building's approximately 92,000 square feet, 4 stories with a small office area at the front of the building for customer access. We do have available parking that'll be shown. And as I said, there will be a great deal of site improvements in the way of drainage and landscaping. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chaz if you have any other questions. We do expect that given some of the staff comments we received and the vacation schedules of some of the staff, we're hoping to give you the overview tonight, find out if there are any questions, and then try and wrap up the remaining comments outstanding from various town departments over the course of the next 2 weeks, particularly when the city traffic engineer returns from vacation next week. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chaz.
Thank you, Amy. I guess if I could have the ability to share my screen. You know, if the commission's able to see the overlay plan we have.
Yes, we can.
Yep.
So as Amy had mentioned, existing property is 3 buildings, 2 warehouse buildings, an existing home, abuts 84 and on Sandpit Road. I bring up this plan, which was in the package that the commission has, kind of to show existing versus proposed. Our plan actually reduces impervious coverage by about 3,300 square feet, while increasing a building footprint of what exists right now, about 17,000 square feet in building footprint. We have about a 23,000 square foot footprint, so slightly larger, but overall a reduction of impervious coverage and a significant reduction in pavement, and asphalt coverings. What we're proposing from a stormwater management system are 2 systems. There's one proposed in the rear of the site and one proposed in the front of the site. The rear drains to the existing drainage system that runs to the south, and the front drains over to the side property where there's another existing drainage culvert that drains through. Similar drainage patterns, but again, the site is kind of tiered, where part of it drains to the back and part of it drains to the front. As you can see, when I go up to Sandpit Road, one of the goals of the site with a redevelopment is to really improve the access onto Sandpit Road. So the proposed access drive is minimized to the 30-foot width compared to what exists now. And you can see, the curb cut that's there is relatively wide, and this would help to mitigate that traffic flow. In regards to traffic, we currently propose 19 parking spaces and 2 loading areas that are 30-foot in width. So with a typical box truck, you should be able to fit 2 box trucks on either side for a total of 4 spaces. It was something that was mentioned in engineering comments that we don't currently meet the exact loading space definition, but we're going to be working with town staff on just clarifying the extent of the loading space to comply. One item to note on the parking, again, we are proposing 19. What we're utilizing for a code compliance is actually just the office space itself, which is about 575 square feet. And with a town requirement of 300 or one space per 300 square feet, we'd actually only be required for 2 parking spaces. So we are overparked in that regards, and self-storage as a whole is a relatively low traffic impact. So although there's 19 spaces, we don't anticipate the 19 spaces being utilized a majority of the time. With that, the other point, as Amy had mentioned, this has already gone through the environmental impact. There is a reduction in what currently is up against the woodland buffer, where there is pavement and kind of gravel that has no water quality treatment. We're reducing some on the side, as well as some of the areas over here where there's currently vehicle parking and just kind of gravel. That's getting reduced and replaced with lawn cover. On top of that, the 2 stormwater systems themselves, not only meeting the peak rate control required by local and state codes, also provide the water quality that's required for the state system. As Amy mentioned, I know we're still waiting on a traffic review letter, and we did receive the city letter mid-August, working with town staff. I can walk through any comments that the commission may have had questions on. But overall, the goal of the project is to reduce impervious coverage, increase water quality, reduce traffic from what exists on the site, and as Amy mentioned, really consolidate the buildings into one use that kind of better suits the site. I guess one other note from a utility standpoint, as the commission may be aware, Sandpit Road is public water and public sewer. We do have the mapping that was provided by the town. So this proposed system will be hooking up to public water and public sewer that's within the road. With that, I'd open up to any questions that the commission like, or if you'd like me to walk through any of the comments we received from town engineering, we can walk through kind of some of our initial responses we're working on to submit early next week.
Commission members, any questions at this time? I apologize. When we share the screen, I can't see everybody. I can only, I can't go to my other, okay. Okay, now, Mr. Tokyo, I saw your hand go up, please. All yours.
Yep. Sure, a couple of questions. I guess it would be maybe helpful if you, once you're done with a couple of questions I have, if you can maybe share some of your responses so far to staff's comments so far. One question I have in looking at that plan, and maybe you can bring that back up, is kind of the and maybe you're going to get to this with the with traffic comments, but kind of we'll call it a truck turning plan or a car turning plan. I would like to see the traffic flow there. To me, I mean, it looks like the driveways are wide enough, but kind of to turn around seems like it might be a little bit difficult there, and if cars or 2 trucks could pass. So if you can kind of share your thoughts on how that would work. And then one other comment, I guess, on the parking, given that you have so many extra spaces over code, maybe is it worth it to get rid of some of those and help with either the traffic plan or improve the pervious surface area?
No, understood. On the first piece, in regard to the truck turn, that was a comment we did receive. We did recently run, I don't have the plans in front of me. We'll be again resubmitting those early next week. But we did run a standard box truck that would be common here. We ran a fire truck as well as a trash truck. To your point, the fire truck and trash truck have to make somewhat of a K turn to maneuver to the back of the site, but they are able to maneuver through the site to access those 3 sides.
Okay, so we can see that next time when you share that. That's fine.
And then regarding parking and reserve, something we can look into. Again, we'd like to fit as much parking in as possible just in case of a peak. But again, we can look into that with, our team and town staff, if that happens to be a request.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, commission members, at this time? I know we're waiting for our own traffic engineer, so I would anticipate more questions regarding, internal flow, and the access driveway will arise when we get that report. So, so thank you very much, Mr. Evans. I'll say to the applicant, anyone else speaking in favor of this application? Amy, would you like to introduce anyone else at this time?
No, I just wanted to share, if you wanted to see, we did submit some updated renderings and floor plans in response to staff comments. Those were separate and apart from the plans, sort of the more technical review that Chaz is working through with the staff. I'm happy to share those if you want me to, or we can reserve those also for next time, but they just addressed, frankly, they addressed the staff comments about being signed and sealed and some of the other information that was requested in the staff report.
No, please share them. And I would say as
Sure.
a general, not necessarily unique to your application, we happen to be seeing a lot of these applications for self-storage. And we'd like, as a planning commission or as a community, for these things to be as aesthetically pleasing as possible. What we're trying to avoid is a great big gray box sitting in the
Correct.
middle of Sandpit Road. So that's what we're desperately trying to avoid. And anything you could do to that end would be very appreciated.
Great. So hopefully this will come up. It should put you right onto so this is the front entrance that Chaz was just orienting you. Here's the office and the loading area to the right, parking along the front of the building and along the landscaped area. And then, hold on one second, I'm just gonna move a cursor. And then we also have, this is sort of as you're coming around the building, as you're going toward the back here. This is the, in fact, the rear of the building as you've come, so you've come around in that last image on the right side of the screen, coming around to the back, trash enclosure, and this is taken from an angle where you can see that this is enclosed. This is the other loading area at the back, and then the sort of true rear of the building, excuse me, the side of the building to the, as you're looking at the at the plan, to the right of the layout that Chaz pulled up in existing conditions to the eastern elevation. And then just to provide the overall context view, you have the, sort of a quasi aerial of the site with the adjacent buildings, I-84 and some of the development in the background. And then a second aerial from the other direction. So basically, if you were above I-84 looking down on the building, this is the larger context view. And then the last thing was a layout of the floor plans that we've provided. And this just shows, as staff had requested, the general layout of the types of storage units on each of the floors. So this is one of the floors. This is the first floor with the office and entrance shown here. And you can see some of the smaller units. The count is shown on there. Happy to go into any of the details that you would want. Again, representative images of the various floors. And then the last, sorry for the delay, but then the sort of regular sketch elevations of the south and west in this image, and the east and north in this elevation. So this was, these were sent into staff, and there is a hard copy to the extent that anybody wants to look at, colors or anything else not on a screen. These are all available. We did submit the hard copies to staff. I think they should have been received yesterday or maybe this morning. So those are all there and have been and also submitted electronically. So happy to address any of those comments or any of the elevations if you want me to go back to them.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
Just one quick question. Access to the building, is it just through the loading dock areas, or are there any other doors that you can access the building through?
You can get in from, hold on, let me zoom in. Sorry. You can access the area from the office, but then Chaz, I believe the only other access is through the loading docks, correct?
Correct, and there are hours where the office is staffed, and then there is
Right.
keypad access at certain times of day.
Thank you.
Any other questions, commission members?
Mr. Chairman, sorry.
Yes,
Yeah, I have one or two. I assume there's sprinkler systems being provided here, right? 4-story building. Yeah. Can you hear me?
yes, the applicant, the question was, is the building sprinklered?
Yes, it is.
And there's, how many elevators are provided there? I know there's probably 2 at the loading docks. Anywhere else?
I believe they're just on the loading docks. Hold on one second. Sorry, I'll pull it back up on the floor plan.
I was looking down by the office, didn't know whether there was one
Yes,
over.
there's a, so I'll zoom in for you.
No,
So you have the elevator right here at the loading lobby, right next to the stair, and then sort of in the back, again, adjacent to the loading dock. There is not one over by the in the office area. Those are smaller units, bathroom, etc.
Okay. And then a final question on, there was a steep hill in the back, and I don't remember seeing much addressed about that. So did it have any impact at all on the design and, any mitigation being done if there is any needed?
That was a question that had come up with wetlands, and Chaz can go into the details, but what we tried to do was maintain the existing limit of disturbance. So we did not go, that's where the wetlands are basically at the bottom of that slope. So we had tried to design the site to maintain the existing area of disturbance, actually pull it back a little bit. And we can show you where that is on the plan, but there's nothing going below that slope.
I can share my screen here to just walk through the grading plan here. So as the site exists today, there's kind of a flattening of the site up at the 317, 318 location here, and this is the steep slope that comes down to this stream channel here. So again, as Amy had mentioned, the goal was to take kind of where this starts to flatten out, and that's kind of our peak from a disturbance standpoint. And again, as mentioned, we ended up actually pulling back some of this here that's currently a drive lane to kind of pull back a landscape buffer and be able to give a little bit more of a softer grade up against the property line. Raising up the building. The building sits about similar as it did in the center of the site, but as the site drops, between 3 and 4 feet across the site and just drains to the neighboring property, putting the flat portion of the building, required us to fill a little bit on a portion of the site here and there. So again, that steep hill that ran down the back of the site isn't being touched, and is kind of, again, the drainage is being captured so it doesn't just sheet flow off, and let anything that would happen in this parking lot, if it were a spill or something like that, would right now just go right to the stream. This is capturing anything within the parking lot, treating it in the stormwater before it's then discharged to the stream.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Again, commission members, any further questions at this time? As I mentioned, we're going to keep the public hearing open, so as questions arise, you can certainly ask them at our next meeting. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this application? Anyone else in favor? Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Anyone in opposition? Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Attorney Sochins, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your name, is there anything else you'd like to add at this time?
No, I think that's it. If there were any other questions that the commission members have, we're happy to address them, even if they come up before the next hearing, through staff. Otherwise, we'll look forward to being back in 2 weeks, and hopefully we'll have resolved all of the comments that we've received and can close at that point.
Great, thank you very much.
Great.
Commission members, unless there's anything else, I'll entertain a motion to continue this hearing until our next meeting on September 20th.
Mr.
I'll make a
Chairman, so
motion to
moved.
continue the hearing.
Okay, I think Perry's got the motion and Bob has the second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This public hearing will be continued till our next meeting on September 20th, 2023. That's it for new public hearings, commission members.
Thank you.
Move right. Thank you. Have a good evening, folks. We will move right to continuation of public hearing agenda item number 1. Down Home Associates LLC, property owner, application for special exception site plan approval for self-storage and other self-storage facility. That seems to be the thing to do these days. Putnam 3 self-storage in the IL40 zone, 7 Great Pasture Road, L16001, special exception number 794. Commission members, as shown on our agenda, there will be no discussion or testimony on this application tonight. And this one too will be continued until September 20th of 2023. Ally, do I need a motion to continue, or can we just continue? I think I need a motion. Let's do a
Yes.
motion. Anyone?
I'll make the motion to continue.
Got it.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to continue the application of Down Home Associates until our next meeting. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll move right to old business for discussion and possible action. Sugar Hollow Road Associates LLC revised floodplain permit for the shops at Marcus Dairy for a new standalone fast food restaurant with drive-through window in the CG20 zone, 5 Sugar Hollow Road and Beckus Avenue, G17002. Special exception number 663, often referred to as the Panera application. A draft resolution was submitted to everyone. And Jen, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Joanne, can you let me share my screen? If I can get this to work. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Now
Okay. So, as you all remember, it was actually last year, I think, although we've had it for quite some time. So the commission approved the Panera application earlier this year, actually, March 2023. They then came in for some revisions. We actually just approved it a few weeks ago, sign off from the engineering department as well. Those changes have been just minor tweaks to the building and to some of the design of the drainage. So the floodplain permit, as you can see, if you recall, here's the building right here, the drive-through. Here's Bacchus Avenue. The Kissen Brook is right through here, which again is all within the regulated floodplain. This line right here, this dash line, is the 100-year flood. If you recall, this whole area is in what we call an unnumbered A zone. We have base flood elevation from the Army Corps that we've used consistently since, I believe, the 90s, which sets it at 454.4. Based on site work, again, they're doing some cutting, some filling. Based on that, the volume of work results in approximately 406 cubic yards of fill through site work and additional storage provided from the storm drainage. They're compensating, which results in an additional 34 cubic yards of additional storage. With that, they comply with the zoning regulations. They've set the building at 455.6, which is 1.2 feet above the base flood. If you recall, we like to see that building at least a foot above. So they've complied with that. With respect to conditions, we generally, against standard conditions, any changes requires it to come back to the commission. And then we'll ask for an elevation certificate once the building's complete. Is there any questions?
Any questions for Jennifer? Well, we got off easy, Jen. The floodplain permit didn't generate a lot of discussion. Well, commission members, if you have no questions, you all have the draft resolution in hand. Unless there's anything else, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion to approve.
Thank you, Helen. Motion made to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the floodplain permit. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Floodplain permit is approved. Okay. Moving right along, we have one item under referrals, but it's a big one. A3A referral petition of Danbury Mall LLC to amend section 23F2 of and add sections 5I and 8E4A to the zoning regulations, new mixed-use regional mall zoning district and associated amendments. The zoning commission public hearing is scheduled for September 12th, 2023. Again, the actual the planning department staff report was included, as well as a copy of the actual petition with the proposed language. I believe Sharon is handling this one. So Sharon, if you want to get started, go right ahead.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, I'm Sharon Cletro, I'm the planning director. So you all have received a copy of my staff report dated August 30th. We have received, the zoning commission received a petition to amend the zoning regulations, sections 2B, which is the definition sections, and 3F2, which are use regulations for special permit uses, cafes and taverns and grocery stores. Number one, to define new brew pub use, and then add that use to the section of the regulations that govern special permits and the sale of alcoholic beverages. The petition also seeks to add two new sections to the zoning regulations, sections 5I to the commercial zoning district regulations and 8E4A to the section on signs to provide for a new mixed-use regional mall commercial zoning district, which we have entitled the MIRM. The proposed format, we tried to come up with something more creative, but Tom, we kind of got stuck with that, working together. So the format of the new sections, follow the organizational structure of the existing regulations. And the reasons, of course, I think you got a copy of Attorney Beecher's letter. The reasons why the petition should be granted are contained in that letter dated August 11th, 2023. The comments in the staff report generally refer to the creation of the new district and the sign regulations. We really don't have any issues, as I indicated in the third paragraph, with adding a new use to the zoning regulations, nor making the changes that govern the special permit provisions for that use. It's a common use, it's a brew pub. You look up in zoning regulations in municipalities throughout the state, you see that use quite often. As it's defined, as it's proposed to be defined in the petition, it really is a restaurant that includes an area within that facility for manufacturing, packaging, and storage of beer for on and off-site consumption. You need to get a state permit for beer manufacturing. That's required by the state, and we've limited the quantities. This is not a brewery. We have a definition for a brewery. This is really a restaurant that can brew its own beer and sell its own beer, but it operates as a restaurant. So again, we don't have any issues with that, amending the regulations. In fact, we've been asked to do that and to consider that over time. So this was a good opportunity to do just that and incorporate it in, and I'll tell you when I get to it how it relates to this new MIRM zone. So the general comments on the MIRM district regulations: it's a new zone. It's intended to address some redevelopment issues that are specific to large regional commercial centers that are really configured inward, with the majority of the tenants having access via a pedestrian concourse. The regional center in Danbury, I think we can all agree, is undoubtedly the area and the structures of the Danbury Fair Mall. And as you may recall, you all sat on the POCD committee, adopted the POCD, and the mall was recognized in that document as an economic driver for the city of Danbury. It has regional significance, as taxpayer status, obviously, as unique physical characteristics, and the environment sets it apart from other general commercial zones like our CG20, our CA80, our limited light, and our neighborhood commercial zones. This is kind of a different animal. And sustaining the mall as a regional center does require a focus on the regulatory scheme by which redevelopment can occur. I think we all every day pick up the paper and read about what's going on with malls. So we have to kind of be creative about it and look at the regulatory scheme. We have to be flexible in the regulations, and we have to set a clear regulatory process to allow for the changes. So this petition seeks to create this new zoning district and to promulgate specific regulations for it, including specific sign regulations. The action of the zoning commission, as you know, is to create the district, and finding that it's warranted, consistent with the city's land use plan for the future and in this area, and make a decision on whether or not the text aligns with the city's zoning schemes and if it's in the city's best interests. This is not, as you know, a rezoning request for the Danbury Fair Mall property. This is a petition to amend the regulations for the city of Danbury. Should this be approved by the zoning commission, that a rezoning process would occur later. So therefore, the focus should be on the regulations for the new zone, including the list of the permitted special exception and special permit uses and how those uses will be regulated. And that includes signage. The new section on signage for the MIRM is intended to address the specific concerns relative to signs in the new district and on these large structures within the district. And they are formatted, that section 8E, 4A is formatted consistent with the other sign regulations. So let me just walk you through, and it might take a few minutes, so bear with me. Let me walk you through and comment on the new sections of this new district. So 5I, proposed sections 5I 1 through 3, provides the purpose and intent of the district, which follows how we follows the zoning scheme, identifies the eligible properties to which the new zone could apply, and conditions of use. The sections provide development standards relative to ownership and minimum lot size, the requirement for utilities, and the ability to add residential uses within an existing building, as well as access and location. The MIRM district would be specific to large parcels that are designed and operated as a regional mixed-use mall. The conditions on use standards or those in 5I2 appear reasonable. The residential use, again noted in 5I3C, is only being proposed to be permitted within or in the footprint of an existing building that's 75,000 square feet or larger. So if a new building were to be proposed to be built on this site, should it be rezoned, you can't put housing in a new freestanding building. The housing would have to be in, it's like an adaptive reuse for a big tenant space. Of course, subject to the approvals. Other freestanding buildings could be allowed within the zone, and they would follow the regular approval process. Section 5A4 contains a list of uses proposed in this new zone. Again, that organizational format follows and is in alignment with how the other zoning districts regulations are written. In terms of the specific permitted special exception and special permit uses, most of those uses actually mirror the uses that are allowed in the CG20 zoning district. The mall, in fact, is in the CG20 zoning district. So I know there's been some press about, oh no, all these new uses. Most of those uses are already allowed. So it's not really anything per se new. There are some, however, there are some specific new uses, and I just brought up a couple of them: art gallery, a conference center. But in the same vein, there are also uses that are allowed in the CG20 zone that are omitted from this proposed zoning district, including funeral homes and a crematory or a firehouse, or building material monument or building material sales and other construction related uses, and motor vehicle repairs and sales. That you can actually do in a CG20 zone. You would not be allowed to do that in this new zone. The uses that are proposed are intended to provide a mix of commercial uses, including retail and entertainment uses, with limited residential, generally, again, within one structure on the property or within the mall property. The two uses that are notably new to the zoning district and are not allowed in the CG20 are an apartment house and a garden apartment. Again, as I indicated previously, those residential uses could only be established within an existing structure. There is a density limitation proposed, and I'll talk through that in a moment, but there is a specific requirement that the majority of the square footage within the building remain non-residential. That helps protect kind of the integrity of the uses in the building. So we're not converting at one point in this particular case, we'll use it as an example, a 1.2 million square foot building to all residential use. So there is a provision.
For just a second, I'm sorry,
Yep.
Attorney.
Yep,
Under permitted uses
Yep.
in the new zone, 5I4.
Yep.
I think it was use number 36. I mean, most of them look pretty straightforward. It said a sewer and water pumping station, telephone exchange. Is that to accommodate the residential that we're also trying to insert? It just seemed, that one kind of jumped off the page at me as a permitted use in the
That's allowed, Mr. Chairman. That's allowed in the CG20 zone today. We just, in case we needed to do something from a municipal standpoint as well, we didn't feel like that really it's kind of an innocuous thing. It's a tiny little, sewer pump station if we needed it, sewer or water. I mean, that site is served by sewer and water to begin with.
Okay.
So
Right.
it's
like you
fairly
said-
unlikely. We just left things that didn't seem to make, or they
Right.
proposed uses that didn't seem, we didn't disagree with that.
Okay. And like you said, the mall's in CG20 now, and that's a permitted use in CG20 now.
Correct. That is correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, I mean, I went through and did a whole big chart of those are new, and these are all the ones that aren't allowed now. So there's more that's not allowed than are new.
Yeah, I agree with the ones you omitted. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So, and I'll get to back to the residential, but there is a density limitation based on the size. And then there's that requirement for the structure, the majority of the square footage to remain non-residential. And there is an opportunity to provide some deed restricted affordable housing, and I'll get to that in a second as well. Section 5I5 provides a general use. Oh, let me just go back one more thing. I was going to wait to the end, but I'm going to jump in right now. So after this was submitted, I had some conversations with Attorney Beecher relative to adding the church and place of worship back in. For some reason, we all said, okay, maybe, maybe that wouldn't necessarily be a use in the new zone, but we didn't want to get into any situation. That use is actually allowed in almost every single zone. And I didn't want to create a scenario where you allow places of assembly, but you exclude a church and get into some federal issue with it. So he agreed that he would submit back to the zoning commission. I'm anticipating that early part of next week. And he'll discuss it at the public hearing, but I wanted to bring it to your attention. So the intention is to add that use, which is already allowed in the CG20. They could do it today, just back in the list of uses. Okay. 5I5 provides the general use regulations, and except for the minimum site area and the building height, the yard setback and the coverages are the same as they currently exist today in the CG20. The height is being proposed at 75-foot limit. The current height, as you know, is 45 feet. So it's 30 feet taller than what's allowed in the CG20 district. It is, however, the same building height allowed in the P&D and the RH3 zones for apartment houses and within the CBD zone outside the Main Street Historic District overlay for uses in the CBD zone. We did have some concerns while this was being drafted and we were going back and forth relative to the fact that the area to which this could apply is in a district, in an area where the approach zone and the transition zone of the Danbury Airport crisscross above it. And so we wanted to be sure 75 feet was something that practical that could be achieved. So we suggested that we collaborate with the airport administrator on the language relative to height. And Tom drafted some language. We went back and forth with Mr. Safranek at the airport, and that language is contained in 5I, 5B, 1 through 5. And again, and why that's important is that we want to be sure that somebody who develops in that zone understands a portion of that site may be governed by the airport protection zone. Number one, we wanted to provide the reviewing agency or the department with the ability to condition or make recommendations on the redevelopment because you're in the zone, and to confirm that the redevelopment to 75 feet is actually possible, so that the zoning commission, as I said earlier, doesn't approve a regulation that allows something that we can't really achieve, because that's kind of sort of useless. So we did work with the airport administrator on that section, and that language is reflected in the petition. Section 5I, 5C allows the department to waive the review process for a change in any allowed use in the existing large building, except for a change in use from commercial to residential, or a change that results in use being classified as a trip generator. This isn't really appropriate if you're trying to redevelop large parcels, and it's similar to what's been established and what we're doing in the P&D. Uses change all the time, one permitted use to another permitted use. It's kind of would be an ordinary, more difficult process each time if you had to come in. So this would allow for us to kind of issue, for those changes to occur without getting kind of tripped up. Except, again, in the course, if you were going to change from commercial to residential, that should be reviewed. And if something is a trip generator, that needs to be, those two scenarios need to go through the standard review process. 5I6 provides use regulations for specific permitted and special exception uses. In subsection A, 1 and 2, it outlines the apartment, house, and garden apartment density and unit typologies, which are restricted. Okay, so the density is proposed at one unit per 35,000 square feet of gross area on a site. So based on a site that's 100 acres, because that's what the minimum is, A density calculation results in a potential for 124 dwelling units for a site that's 100 acres in size. Subsection 3 provides that this is what I spoke about before, non-residential gross building area shall not be less than 93% of the gross building acreage existing at the time of approval of the rezone to the MIRM district. Again, that helps keep the structure and the area mainly non-residential. The subsection 4 requires the minimum open space at 500 square feet of dwelling unit. That's consistent. That square footage is consistent basically across the board in our zoning regulation. It does, however, provide some opportunities to meet that 500 square feet by including things that may not be included, are not actually included or allowed in other zoning districts. For instance, I think we all know the mall's open, people go in there. The stores are not open, they walk the concourse. So we're kind of including and allowing that, or the proposal is to allow that to be counted towards some recreational area, because that is actually, it's like an indoor track, for lack of a better description. Okay, and then contrary to the other sections of the zoning regulations establishing how trip generation is calculated, subsection C of 5I6 provides under certain circumstances that trip generation for new uses in the existing building be calculated individually and not cumulatively. I think you all know when you do, the regs require you to account for the trip generation for each use. And then it becomes, in this case, it would automatically be a trip generator no matter what. And that triggers a whole nother process that doesn't allow kind of the easier and faster tenant turnover. So we thought that was appropriate. Again, we're kind of doing that in the PND. And we added some, we suggested, and Tom and his client added in some specific language, which is the last two sentences of that section that provides the department with some discretion to require reasonable traffic improvements during the review process, as if the change were actually processed like a special exception. So we're not going to call it a special exception and require a process for that, but we have the ability to condition and ask for some improvements. And though that's the same language that currently exists as if it were a special exception. So we did not have any objection to that. The specific use regulations for daycare centers and schools are the same that are in the other zones, and we thought that those were acceptable. Section 5I7 identifies specific use regulations under two special exception uses and/or circumstances. First, if there's a use that's proposed in a new freestanding building or in any addition to an existing building, that would be considered a special exception. So new building, and let's just take, for instance, Longhorn Shake Shack on its own pads, built in the parking lot, special exception. Or if you want to add stories to the existing building, special exception. And then, and under those scenarios, the same trip generation alternative would apply. In other words, you wouldn't have to do the cumulative, you would just address what new traffic would be generated under those scenarios. And then secondly, under the special exception, they provided a housing incentive option, which I spoke about earlier, that would allow for an increase in density with the provision of deed restricted affordable units. So the language in this section basically mirrors that which is in 4B7 in the RMF 4 and 6 zones, which basically says, and in this specific circumstance, it would the density calculation would be reduced to 1 per 25,000 square feet, but half of the additional units above what you would get if you calculated at 1 per 35,000 square feet. So again, same as what's in the housing incentive option, 50% of those would have to be deed restricted as affordable units. This is a way and an incentive if anyone wanted to put more density, then the base, then the city would get some deed restricted affordable units. And in our opinion, that's a benefit to the city. So and again, on 100 acres, I just did the calculation, it would be 50 additional units. And of the 50, 25 would be deed restricted. So if you wanted to build more than at 100 acres, the 124, and you wanted to get to 174, 25 units would be deed restricted. It's a good thing. 5I8 establishes additional regulations relative to parking and loading. While the general requirements of 8C would apply, there is an exception for sites in the MERM district with more than 4,000 parking spaces. That's a lot of parking. And it relieves, the proposed petition also relieves the residential use, should there be one, of the requirement to provide guest spaces. Why? Because there's a lot of parking there. It does, however, not include hotels and restaurants. I'm sorry, let me restate that. In terms of the uses, except for hotels and restaurant, it reduces the retail or non-residential use parking requirements by increasing the square footage from 1, which is currently 1 per 150 today, to 1 per 250. So a retail use would be 1 per 250, not 150. And then restaurant-owned hotels would have to have parking under our regular requirements. In terms of loading, additional spaces would not be required. We'd have to confirm. The proposal is that the department would confirm the existing spaces and their location, and you could not convert the existing spaces to anything without site plan approval and assurances that there is sufficient loading. In other words, they can't take up loading spaces with new retail space without going through an approval. This section also provides non-conforming parking to remain as is with respect to landscaping, irrespective of paving or reconstruction of the parking lot. This doesn't, however, apply if you have a new freestanding building and the use requires new parking. You have to build in accordance with the parking requirements. The commission may reasonably conclude the proposed language with respect to parking and loading in this new district appears appropriate given the unique design of the site and building and due to the existence of several thousand parking spaces on the site. Section 5I9 provides that sign regulations shall comply with Section 8E, except for large sites with structures over 1 million square feet in size. And if that's the case, then the sign regulations that are proposed, the new sign regulations that are proposed as Section 8E4A would come into play. And I just wanted to point out for the mall site, because we're kind of talking about that, there have been, of the 12 or so variances since 1984, all but 2 were to vary the sign regulations. And I think that's probably good evidence that our basic commercial sign regulations are kind of sort of difficult to implement for a building that's 1 million square feet in size, multi-tenants. And so they collaboratively crafted the sign regulations to address those specific circumstances. You should note the amount of signage, and in this new zone, the amount of signage on the exterior walls of the regional center will be allowed to increase. So they'll get more signage than what's allowed. The new regulations are proposed for freestanding signs, including the allowance for one of those freestanding signs to be partially digital, to allow for access drive signs, and for new tenant freestanding signs. In most cases, as it would be applied to the mall site, all these signs are in existence today. So we're not talking about what's there plus. Most of them would then fall under what is being proposed. Again, the specific language on the section of signage was discussed with the zoning enforcement officer at length because he enforces the sign regulation. He issues sign permits and he enforces sign regulations. We did not have any objection. Staff didn't have any objection to the regulations as they're drafted. I indicated here, we note, however, the sign regulations will be sent to the airport administrator for review, and he may comment on allowing digital displays. So we did get some additional comments, and similar to addition of the church use, Attorney Beecher has agreed to add some additional language to one of the sections on the freestanding digital sign, which basically says if it's in an airport protection zone, you got to get approval from the FAA and the airport administrator. Makes perfect sense. And the City of Danbury Planning and Zoning Department and the Zoning Enforcement Officer can require some adjustments to the illumination, use of color, timing of the message of the digital sign within the airport protection zone. Should, once it's installed and operating, the airport administrator come back to us and say, hey, you know, light green isn't a good color. Can you tone down the green? So we can get back to the applicant or the landowner and say, can you make some adjustments to the sign? It's a potential safety issue. So he agreed, and those adjustments would be required to be implemented within 2 business days. So again, Attorney Beecher is going to add that language in, submit that as part of the package, but I wanted to bring it to your attention so that you know we did go through that language with the airport administrator at this point, so we could get comments incorporated before the public hearing or during the course of the public hearing at the zoning commission level. Okay, I'll wrap up, I promise. So consistency with the plan of conservation and development. Again, you all know what the FLUM is, right? The future land use map. We talked about it, we looked at it, you adopted it. That serves as a guide. The FLUM designation is a reference to consider when contemplating amendments to the regulations. The FLUM designation for the area of the Danbury Fair Mall is a regional mall in recognition of the role as a regional commercial center and its uniqueness of its design and operation. The designation in the plan notes an area under common management consisting of a single structure wherein a mix of compatible uses are provided, and that is designed or oriented inward, with the majority of the uses accessible from a common interior concourse. This is a different layout, again, than a common strip center. A mix of uses are contemplated within the regional mall area, and shared parking and outbuildings surround the major structure. As this petition seeks to create a zone that fits that general description that was contained within the POCD, the commissions may reasonably conclude the petition is consistent with the POCD. In terms of specific sections of the POCD, review and updates to the commercial zoning regulations was a recommended strategy, strategy number 6 of the economic development section, to ensure the regulations provide sufficient flexibility to respond to current and future market conditions. The action or the step taken as part of the strategy includes consideration of a new district, and several uses were recommended in the POCD document. While housing was not specifically noted, it was also not specifically prohibited. So therefore, the commissions could reasonably conclude that the new zone and the uses therein are consistent with that strategy and action. And in terms of housing, the proposed amendments introduce a housing component, hence the mixed use nomenclature. Density is limited, the use is confined to existing buildings or in addition to an existing building, and can be increased above the 1 per 35,000 square feet only if it under the housing incentive option if some of those units are deed restricted as affordable. And as you know, through the POCD and the Affordable Housing Plan, they both recommended exploring opportunities to create affordable housing, and this petition provides an incentive to develop more housing in general, and the opportunity to create affordable housing if they want any more. Therefore, in terms of consistency with the housing component of the POCD and the HP, again, the commissions could reasonably conclude the petition is consistent with both of those documents. And then just in conclusion, as noted by Attorney Beecher, and I've said throughout this presentation, the regulations were developed collaboratively with the petitioner after the POCD process, and you approved POCD and it became effective. In doing so, staff strive to protect the city's best interest in terms of opportunities for growth while balancing the objectives of the petitioner. The amendments are written in a format that we deem consistent with the existing regulations and have been vetted by several departments, as I noted. The administrative and other review processes are outlined and mandated where appropriate. The signage and parking regulations address the unique circumstances associated with a mixed-use regional mall commercial center, not unlike other regional commercial zones in Connecticut and throughout the country. And finally, as I indicated above, the POCD contemplated developing a regional mall mixed-use district, and this is what most of these, well, in terms of the new additions to the zoning regulations, that's just what they do. Therefore, we don't have any objection to this petition. The commissions should determine if the uses, regulations, and restrictions are appropriate and make their determination. And as always, the Planning Commission issues its report to the zoning commissions as to the consistency of the proposed regulations with the POCD and any other relevant recommendations. And then the zoning commission will consider your recommendation under the statutes when it makes its decision. I know that's a lot. Sorry, it was fast. And I will answer any questions.
Well, Sharon, first, before we get to the questions, just acknowledge the hard work that went into this. We don't see that many staff reports, 5 pages, single space. This is a big deal. And I'd just like to acknowledge the hard work that was done. So we had your 5 pages of single spaced on your report, and then Attorney Beecher's letter, which was also 5 pages single spaced. So a lot of reading to do on this matter. And it does appear that it was a very collaborative process. So I just like to acknowledge that before we go to questions and discussion. Just one other thing before we do that. And again, the commission's probably sick of me saying this, but again, this is a referral. This is an 8-3A referral. The zoning commission is the body that will actually have a public hearing with, people speaking in favor and against and all the rest of it. So we do not allow for public input or any testimony on a referral. We deal strictly with the staff. So it's more of a limited presentation and a recommendation to the zoning commission, and then the ultimate decision rests with them. I just wanted to remind all the commission members of that. With that said, commission members, any comments or questions for Sharon at this time? Mr. Kiokio.
I have a few questions. How many properties of a minimum 100 acres would fit this in Danbury? Are there any? I know you could maybe cobble together a few different pieces, even if they're owned by other people. But is there any area or property that this could apply to at some point?
Well, it could apply to the area around that contains the mall today.
Okay, yeah, I understand that. Besides that area.
Oh, besides that, well, it could, not without probably substantive changes to kind of the existing building layout. I mean, it's kind of specific, as we kind of talked about as part of the POCD process, unto itself, and treated a little bit different than the other regular commercial zones. So probably not, I would say.
Because you'd have to
Not that
get,
it can't be done, but you'd have to, I mean, you need 100 acres, right? And you'd have to have a big building with interior concourses. I mean, to meet the purpose and intent, you have to be able to comply.
yeah, okay. How many parking spaces are there at the mall now?
Ooh, Jen might know the answer to that question and Ally more than me. I think there's 5,600, something like that.
Okay.
Based after the last target, the last approvals I think you issued, I think they're some hover around 6,000. There may be a little less than 6,000.
Okay, and roughly, do you know how many are required for the existing uses now? I mean, is there like 10 more than they need, or is it like 2,000 more than they need?
Oh, no, I think it's they're, Jen, do you know the answer to that question? I think there's several hundred, I want to say.
I think they're over by 400 to 500 over.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And Ally, tell me if I'm wrong.
We do have that in the spreadsheet. I just not sure I have that.
Yes, they're about 400 or 500 over, and they do hover around 5,600 to 6,000.
Great, thanks. Okay. So if they were to build a new freestanding building there, would you have to redo the whole parking calculations again?
Yeah, they would have to meet the requirements for parking for the new use, yes.
So that would mean
Just like Shake Shack and Longhorn, right? They took up parking, but they took up excess,
yeah.
let me restate that. They're in an area that was excess parking. And then they put the building in, they had to make sure that they complied with whatever was required based on the requirements in place.
Okay.
So if it was a restaurant, because we're taking that out of the mix of, that goes from 1 per 150 to 1 to 250, because that's regular retail, but restaurants have to meet the existing regulations. So if they did a pad, for instance, that was a restaurant pad, and that just that alone would need to comply with the existing parking regulations in the zoning in zoning today.
Okay. So if they added a freestanding building, that would kind of eat into that extra 500, say, parking, right? So they could be short, but given the new calculation, that's going to kind of compensate for that and help that.
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
It's going to be a balance, it'd be a balance.
Got it.
They're all,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay. What are new tenant freestanding signs? What would that be? An example of one.
New tenant freestanding signs. So say,
are there existing freestanding signs?
Yeah. I'm trying to give you a good example. Well, I guess round one, we can just use the round one example. If they have a tenant that's kind of got an area that, the round one entrance is on the side of, what is the name? What's that store? It's Jen, on the corner.
LL Bean.
LL Bean, right. So it kind of has an interior kind of main entrance. So if they wanted a freestanding sign closer to the parking area, so people would know to go in that way,
Okay.
that would be a tenant freestanding sign.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, just on the uses, I get the deletions and the new ones, and in general, fine with that. I do note that some of the special exception were put in just and now are no longer required. The one I question or just have some questions on is a convenience market, and I know it's in there now and it's a special exception. And I looked up the definition there. The one thing I was concerned about is whether or not they can sell alcohol, and it doesn't say it can or it can't. It doesn't say it can, so I think because it doesn't, that means they can't.
Right.
So I guess that's okay there.
You could do a grocery store. So say a grocery store wanted to take, let's just for instance, say a grocery store wanted to go into, I'm just using this as an example. A grocery store wanted to go into, a part of where JCPenney is. They could then apply for a grocery beer permit.
Okay. Got it.
Or, grocery.
Yep. And that would also need a zoning, right?
Oh,
Zoning
yeah.
permit?
Yeah.
Okay. And that would be under the liquor license process with the zoning. right?
Correct. Yeah, that would be the same. That's
Got it.
why it's listed under special permit uses. So the brew pub, the grocery store, the package store, a restaurant or cafe that wanted to sell alcohol, and a tavern, all would, if they wanted to go in the mall like they are today in the CG20, they would have to go get a special permit from the zoning commission.
Yep. Okay. Okay. The only thing I would be concerned with is that more of sale of alcohol there. And I know that they could do it now, they could apply for that now. But given that, I'll call it demographics, or it's changing of what all the uses are there. And it seems to be maybe things are going to be open later on, till midnight or whenever. I would just get nervous as to the sale of alcohol there and just the different clientele that might bring there, kind of at the later hours there.
Mhm.
That would be my only comments there. And that's all I had.
Thanks, Bob. Anyone else have any thoughts on this referral they'd like to share? I have just a couple of comments. As we sort of take the helicopter up and look down on this application, everyone that participated in the drafting of the plan of conservation and development is aware of the need for housing in Danbury, the need for new homes and apartments. That was very well documented in the POCD process, and it really isn't under dispute from anybody. I like the fact that not only is the proposed application consistent with the POCD and the future land use map, the FLUM, it's also contemporary, consistent with the times we're living in. There was, I think, Attorney Beecher's letter may have alluded to that. The unfortunate reality is you can go on YouTube anytime and watch a video on the rise and fall of the American mall or dead malls or abandoned malls. And we certainly don't want our mall to be featured on any of those videos. So you have to change with the times and be contemporary with the times. I like the idea that the density bonus, in exchange for the density bonus, we could get some deed restricted apartments and increase our stock of affordable housing in Danbury. So there's a lot of good things in this proposed new zone. I know it'll be vetted in more detail in the public hearing process before the zoning commission, but my personal feeling is it's well thought out. I didn't see anything really missing from it, and I'm in favor of it. So I just want to get on record as having said that. Commission members, anything else for Sharon?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Levine.
I appreciate the hard work that went into this, the thorough nature of Sharon's report. And I would like to make a motion to give this a positive referral.
Thank you, Mr. Sylvain. Motion for a positive referral. Do I hear a second?
Could I just, Mr. Chairman, for the reasons noted in the staff report, it's consistent.
Yes, and the consistency with the POCD. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, motion made for a positive referral for the reasons indicated in the staff report. There's a second by Ms. Hofstadter, I believe. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of a positive referral, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? This matter gets a positive referral to the zoning commission. And again, thanks to everyone who contributed very thorough work and a very thorough reports. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Welcome. Okay, commission members, moving on under new business. There's a couple of items coming up on our agenda for September 20th. You can see a couple of floodplain permits, another one for a fast food restaurant. There's nothing under other matters for discussion and possible action. So, Ally or Jen, unless I am missing anything, I think we're ready to adjourn. They agree.
Yes. We
They
agree.
couldn't agree more.
We don't have
Okay.
anything else.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Kyokyo, seconded by Helen. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Thanks to everyone for contributing. Have a good evening.